The Book of Expanded Deism, Chapters 13 and 14. This is part 7 of a 14-part series. The Book of Expanded Deism can be bought on Amazon.com. The Book of Expanded Deism was written by me, Jayson X, to help people be as sane, good, and happy as possible, now and always. To contact me, write to Jayson@Deism. My blog site is jaysonx.com. Chapter 13, Moral Fundamentals. Question 133. How should we live? Answer 133. We should always do as much good as we can, and we should always do as little evil as we can. Question 134. What is good? Answer 134. Good is treating living creatures the way that they should be treated. What is evil? Question 135. What is evil? Answer 135. Evil is not treating living creatures the way that they should be treated. Question 136. What are living creatures? Answer 136. Living creatures are individual things that are alive. Humans, animals, fungi, and plants that are alive are living creatures. Question 137. Why is the focus of good and evil on living creatures? Why not the divine or non-living things such as rocks? Answer 137. In many cases, we can help living creatures live or die, and we can help living creatures be happy or miserable. Simply speaking, we cannot help the divine live or die because the divine will always live no matter what we do. The divine is much more powerful than us. We also should not be able to greatly influence how happy or miserable the divine is. The divine is too powerful for us to physically help or hurt, and the divine should be so wise and mature that the divine should not be very emotionally affected by anything we do. As for non-living things, things have to be alive before they can be helped, hurt, or killed. And obviously, non-living things are not alive. Question 138. How should living creatures be treated? Answer 138. At least in most cases, we should obey the utilitarian rule. Always try to make every voluntary action you do achieve the greatest amount of happiness for the greatest amount of creatures, especially humans. Question 139. Why is it called the utilitarian rule? Answer 139. Simply speaking, utilitarianism is the ethical theory that every voluntary action, every voluntary human action, should attempt to achieve the greatest amount of happiness for the greatest amount of creatures, especially humans. I wrote simply speaking because there are different types of utilitarianism. Question 140. Why should we always, or at least usually, obey the utilitarian rule? Answer 140. It is supported by fundamental and very common human beliefs, such as that happiness is good, relatively good creatures should have as much happiness as possible, humans should be given equal consideration, we should be kind to all sentient creatures, and most non-sentient creatures should be allowed to live. Also, it is an understandable, rational, and consistent rule that can be successfully applied to most, if not all, situations. Question 141. Why is happiness good? Answer 141. There are at least two reasons. One, all humans very much want to be as happy as possible, now and always. In fact, it can be argued that happiness is the only thing humans want. Two, the same is true of many other creatures. Question 142. But what about humans who willingly sacrifice themselves for others, such as parents who willingly sacrifice themselves for their children, Or soldiers who willingly sacrifice themselves for their nation? Aren't they giving up their happiness for the happiness of others? Answer 142. I am not saying that happiness is the only thing humans want. Maybe it is, and maybe it isn't. I don't know. What I am saying is that even such humans might willingly sacrifice themselves for their own happiness. They probably feel happy sacrificing themselves because they are doing what they believe is good. They are not doing what they believe is evil, and they are helping those and/or the cause that they love. Question 143. What is happiness? Answer 143. Happiness is mentally feeling much more pleasure than suffering. It is the opposite of misery. Question 144. What is misery? Answer 144. Misery is mentally feeling much more suffering than pleasure. Chapter 14. Moral Fundamentals continued. Question 145. What is pleasure? Answer 145. Pleasure is a type of feeling which every, or almost every, sentient creature wants to feel. A sentient creature is one living thing that can feel both pleasure and pain. Pleasure is like a color. You either understand it or you don't. Someone blind from conception cannot completely understand the color green because he or she cannot see it. Likewise, someone without the ability to have feelings cannot completely understand pleasure because she or he cannot feel it. Question 146. What is pain? Answer 146. Pain is an unpleasant feeling which can be either desirable or undesirable. Question 147. What is suffering? Answer 147. Suffering is undesirable pain. That is pain that is more harmful than helpful. Question 148. What is the purpose of pain? Answer 148. At least one purpose of pain is to make a creature change his, her, or its behavior to increase her, his, or its chances of successfully passing on his, her, or its genes to the next generation. For example, suppose that a human's hand touches some fire. Touching the fire will make the human feel pain, and the pain will make the human withdraw her or his hand. In other words, it will make the human change what he or she is doing. Withdrawing a hand keeps the hand operational and less likely to get infected. An operational and uninfected hand greatly helps a human to survive, beget children, and successfully raise those children to adulthood. Question 149. What is the difference between suffering and pain? Answer 149. Pain is an unpleasant feeling which can be either desirable or undesirable. Suffering is an unpleasant feeling which is only undesirable. Pain can be either helpful or unhelpful. Suffering is always unhelpful because it is just pain that does not cause one to change her, his, or its behavior to increase his, her, or its chance of successfully passing on her, his, or its genes to the next generation. An example of suffering is the pain caused by arthritis. The pain caused by arthritis does not cause one to change behavior for the better. It only makes one experience an unpleasant feeling. Question 150. What causes pleasure? Answer 150. Having reasonable desires and having those desires fulfilled causes pleasure. Reasonable desires are desires that are obtainable and worth the effort. Unreasonable desires are desires that are not obtainable or just not worth the effort. An example of a reasonable desire is the desire not to starve to death. And an example of an unreasonable desire is the desire to eat all the cheeseburgers on earth in one day. Reasonable desires promote happiness because they can and should be fulfilled. Unreasonable desires promote misery because they cannot and/or should not be fulfilled. Question 151. What are some reasonable desires? Answer 151. Desiring adequate air, water, food, sleep, sex, excretion, physical and mental health, financial security, friends, family, lover, self-respect, respect from others, freedom, and to come close to being the best that one can be at many worthwhile activities. Question 152. What are some unreasonable desires? Answer 152. Desiring all the air, water, food, sexy lovers, leisure time, money, land, oil, diamonds, and popularity on earth. Desiring to enslave and or unjustly hurt humans, and desiring to be better than all humans at everything. Question 153. What causes suffering? Answer 153. Not satisfying reasonable desires. Desiring something that one cannot and or should not have, and or feeling unhelpful pain. Question 154. With all this in mind, how can we be as happy as possible now and always? Answer 154. We can do everything in our power to maximize our pleasure and minimize our suffering for as long as we consciously exist. We maximize our pleasure by having and fulfilling all our reasonable desires. We minimize our suffering by not having unreasonable desires, by not having unfulfilled reasonable desires. Question 155. Is the above answer too simplistic? In other words, isn't there more to being happy than maximizing pleasure and minimizing suffering for as long as one consciously exists? Answer 155. Maybe there is and maybe there isn't. I am not certain. What I am certain about is that the above answer is more true than false, and that I want this book to be understandable for the vast majority of humans. Therefore, I will try to keep the ideas in this book simple and easily understandable, even if there are some exceptions to my assertions.